Stadia podcast, episode number 69. We have whips, we have leather, and that's just the Indiana Jones news, gentlemen, because we've got a great show lined up for you all this week, so thank you for stopping by for episode 69 of the Sounds of Stadia podcast, the longest running Stadia podcast this side of Google Maps. You're joining myself, Chris, one of your hosts, alongside my lovely co-hosts. One of them is the techie teacher himself, brandishing his Indiana Jones cap. Mr. Tom, how are you doing?
I am lost for a cap now. I feel like I need to quickly scrounge around and find a hat somewhere. I'm good. How are you guys today? How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing really good, actually. This news this week has really just energized the year of gaming. We've struggled a bit for topics this past few weeks, if you've not noticed. As the news tends to dry up a little bit in January, so the fact that this week we just got hit with story after story after story is fantastic.
Somebody hit the mother load.
Oh, yes. And below our techie teacher, Mr. Tom, we also have the returning, ever-present face of the man of many pixels, Mr. Richie. How are you feeling this week?
I'm doing quite okay.
I'm quite okay.
I feel
like this. We need to dig deeper on that. What do you mean by quite okay?
Well, it's not quite good, but it's more than just okay.
Well, good thing we've got a great show then to rouse your spirits and tick everything along. So thank you everyone for stopping by. Don't forget, if you are new to the channel or the podcast, like, subscribe, share, review, comment, whatever you need to do to push us onwards and upwards into the Stadia stratosphere. We've got a great show for you lined up. As I mentioned, we've got some Indiana Jones news. We're going to be talking Project Hailstorm. Ooh, exciting stuff. We're going to talk LG TVs getting Stadia baked into the system. Some exciting Star Wars news, I think, for all of us here in the group as well, and much more stuff. But thank you for tuning in. A couple of bit of housekeeping. I think this week we obviously are on the push towards that 1K mark. Richie threw down the gauntlet this week to our good friend Anthony as well. Runs the Stadia Avengers Facebook page, and he's also ever present on the Stadia Source Roundtable podcast. That we're in a race now, ladies and gentlemen. We're in a race to 1K. We're currently in the lead, but we would love to pip him to the finishing line post. Who doesn't love to win a marathon? But obviously, go support ourselves, and jokes aside, Anthony as well over there as well. Give us a like and a subscribe, because we've got some exciting things lined up. We're going to be having some chats with our patrons this week about what we've got lined up, but we want to ideally bring you some more Stadia content and shows that really bring us all together and chat with you guys. So if you are one of those listeners or viewers who sits in the chat, let us know what you'd like to see. We'd really appreciate your feedback as we push towards that 1K as well, and we can only do it with your support. So it's been very exciting to see those numbers creep up every single day. And speaking of things creeping up on us, we had Scott Pilgrim's 10th year anniversary this last week as well. We jumped in and did a live stream of the lovely 16-bit cartoon beat 'em up brawler, whatever you would classify it as, and fought some Evil X's, gentlemen. We had a great time as well. It was super fun, and it really took us back to a very distinct period in our lives, I think, for all of us. It was a very nostalgic, pop culture filled podcast live stream on Thursday, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. It took me back to my early 20s, and I just thought, man, I'm getting old now. But it was good. It was good to have that throwback, I think, really. It's a game I absolutely loved, and it's really fun that we've actually got it on Stadia too now, because it just brought back, as you said, so many memories, and it is the first of its kind on the platform in terms of like a sort of like an arcadey beat 'em up too. So it was working incredibly well, apart from one minor glitch that Richie might have seen, but you're going to go have to check that out.
I would argue the glitch wasn't minor from my perspective.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. If you've not seen it already, Richie basically got stuck in a whole different dimension where me and Tom had defeated the enemies and were ready to move on, and Richie was still beating them up.
Stuck in a time loop.
Exactly. But yeah, if you haven't done so already, head over to check Scott Pilgrim at the World. It's quite cheap actually on the Stadia store. I've seen a couple of people mention that they're going to hang on and wait for it to go pro over the last couple of days, but I wouldn't imagine it'll go pro with being a Ubisoft title. We've not seen any Ubisoft games as of yet. Yeah. And with Uplay Plus on the horizon for the whole Stadia community, not just the US, I'd imagine it's probably not going to be coming. So, but it is well priced.
It's also come out on multiple platforms as well, so I think that, again, reduces the chance of it going pro.
Very true. So if you're hanging on for that one, maybe just bite the bullet and spend some of your hard-earned cash if you do want to play it, like you've got an interest in it. Richie, I'll throw it over to you for our Retcon rituals. A couple of things last week we just need to clarify for our lovely audience out there.
Yep, so first of all, we were talking about the Telltale games, and it was a shame that they no longer exist. Technically, Chris, we were right. because the Telltale games that we were talking about technically no longer exist. However, there is a Phoenix company, also called Telltale Games, that I completely forgot exists, that owns most of the IP from the original Telltale. So Telltale does exist.
Yeah, I remember the story when it went out. It was basically a couple of people bought all the IP rights and they're almost trying to do like a Phoenix company. But the biggest thing that came of all that news was Telltale didn't actually own the franchises. So as a company, Telltale weren't that actually valuable. So they didn't own like Jurassic Park. They didn't own Back to the Future. They don't own Batman. They don't own Walking Dead. They were just leased IPs. Similar to the story we're actually going to get on today in the news. But as a company, they essentially have... not much going for them, which is why buying and restarting this Phoenix company, it's kind of holding on to the assets is quite threadbare. But I think it's the genre I think we were kind of focused on more. But yeah, thank you to AmeriGamer for picking that one out. And the other one was Outriders, right, Richie?
Yeah, so we were talking about Outriders as if it's games as a service, and it isn't.
Okay.
It's quite Square Enix outright claim that it is not a games as a service. It doesn't have microtransactions. But while I was looking this up, because this was another one that was pointed out to us by the YouTube comments, I found a couple of little interesting bits that I don't think we've ever discussed. So it does support the free PS4 to PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series upgrades. So that's completely free. So if you get it on PS4 and then you buy a PS5 later, you get the upgraded version for free. Cool. And it has full crossplay.
That's a nice point. That's nice.
And completely no microtransactions. Just.
So the full crossplay support's huge because Tom, you were mentioning pre-show that there's loads of conversation going on in the community about crossplay, and that it's kind of the crux. If you're a multiplayer gamer, it's kind of imperative in this the growing Stadia community, I suppose, that it needs it to essentially get a foothold almost in the industry.
I think we can all say, really, like, if you try to play a multiplayer game on Stadia at the moment, if it doesn't support crossplay, you're certainly sort of struggling to matchmake in particular. I think there's only a few games that are still sort of surviving with that. I know Outcasters is one of them, but it's a very, very sort of like, if you were new to Outcasters at this point, you're probably going to get overpowered by other people.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's one of them things. I think as more people come to the platform, the problem will resolve itself.
Games like Destiny could really do with having crossplay there as well.
Yeah, I think that's a common consensus, but that's something that hopefully over time and should, in theory, only get better. But crossplay, cross support, cross save, that is, in my opinion, the future of the next generation, especially now everyone's vying for this play anywhere, on any screen, at any time you could possibly get, and those kind of barriers have been broken down across many big things, but we shall see. We shall get into that. But let's get into the main show, gentlemen. People have been hanging around for far too long. As this is episode number 69, Tom, I would like an extra sexy rundown to get us started into the
super sexy special Stadia Story segment, aka
the news. The news indeed.
Hard to do that part with a sexy tone when we always have such energy for it as well.
Yeah,
we almost
I just completely forgot to do the news until like Chris was saying, "Oh, okay."
That's how it goes. You only do it every week, Richie, for the last 70 weeks. Don't worry, it's it's fine. It's fine. We will get there. But like I did say, everybody, sorry for that. It was a really loud but. I don't know why I said that. So like excited it's to kind of really get into it because I've been super sexy and I don't know why I said sexy. What's my mind's going now? Super excited. I know that's
I've just been super sexy.
I've just been super sexy. Thank you. What I meant to say, if I've been super excited, it's because right in front of me is the words "the super sexy special Stadia Story segment." That's why. What I meant to say was, ladies and gentlemen, I have been super excited this week for the news because although it's not been massively heavy on the Stadia front per se, in terms of gaming and a gamer, and as we've always said on the podcast, is every new title announced and coming out, we should go into that with the positive thought process of it will be coming to Stadia. There's a big chance it's coming to Stadia. I wouldn't want to dismiss any of these news stories and just be a naysayer and think, well, they've not said anything in their announcement, so we should just hold off on that one just yet. No, I'm a gamer. I'm excited. And you know what? If it doesn't come to Stadia, I'll play it somewhere else. That's the joys of being a gamer. I'm not restricted to one platform, as we've said many times on this show before. But let's jump into it. Let's get kickstart off with story number 1 of the week. Like a phoenix from the ashes, Tom and Richie, Lucasfilm Games canned in 2012, 2013 upon Disney's acquisition of Star Wars license, has now risen once again, like the empire of old. It rises, and here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Lucasfilm Games.
Are you describing this as like the First Order? If like the original one was the Empire.
Yeah, it really, really was. But along with it, basically, it was announced along with a bevy of other stories, which we'll definitely get into this week. Star Wars games essentially are going to be all brought together under a single banner, and that's rebranded. I don't know if you could call it rebranded because it's Lucasfilm Games, which we've had before. But it's back. It's back, ladies and gentlemen. It is back. And it's come with a string of good news. But essentially, all of those kind of titles that we know and love across all platforms are now come under one banner. And that's interesting to say the least, especially with EA obviously having the license. What are your thoughts on this from a business standpoint from Disney almost giving all their games under one umbrella?
I mean, fantastic.
Yeah. The IP has been relaunched in such a massive way with the success of The Mandalorian. Like it sort of has to be done at this point, really. It's where Disney should be putting all their money in terms of sort of like Star Wars interactive media. So yeah, definitely the right call.
Absolutely. I think it's one of them. I think initially they got rid of it and decided to just give Star Wars, which is by far the biggest IP Lucasfilm Games owns, to just EA for 10 years. Then I wonder how many years into that they realised they probably made a mistake. Because Star Wars is such a it's got, as an IP, is so strong and lends itself to so many different styles of games. Only having one publisher be able to utilise it for such a significant period of time, I do think that was a problematic decision, even if every game that EA brought out was a massive hit.
Yeah, it seemed like one of those kind of early business practices. As soon as they acquired the IP, they thought, well, what can we do? And obviously, clearly a conversation happened between EA that was positive enough to lock them in for a decade. To no surprise, though, I'm one of these people who've genuinely enjoyed a lot of the stuff EA have put out, albeit it's had its problems. I thoroughly enjoyed Battlefront 2. I have the Platinum Trophy in it. I thoroughly enjoyed Squadrons recently, especially in VR mode. That is outstanding. Vader Immortal is a VR title as well. Tom, I know you, we probably speak about it once, but you picked up a little, was it Oculus Quest?
The Oculus Quest 2, absolutely. I actually just played Vader Immortal last night, so...
And oh wait, you started to freeze. Like it's like video calling, like Darth Vader across the Tarkin. It's very problematic. I think I've got you back now. What was your first take on it?
It's incredible. It is so good. It also offers a nice little bit of lore behind, like, sort of in line with the films too. So that's quite nice.
Vader's little training center. Yeah, go check that one out if you have the capability to do so. But yeah, in terms of all the other IP, like I don't play the Galaxy of Heroes on mobile. Unfortunately, I've just not got the time and day. But I think one of the things we should point out, this kind of like rebranding deal that has launched, it just gets me excited. For like, everything is essentially going to be farmed out to specific studios now. It's not just one developer, although one developer, albeit with a lot of smaller developers. Well, I say smaller, in like kind of shell developers within the brand of EA, across multiple different styles. But it's nice to think that creative freedom can be flexed to more than just one particular person now.
The thing with EA is not. Although they are a publisher, so they've got different developers working for them, there's certain practices that have been associated with EA, especially with Battlefront 2, that were absolutely hammered any sort of good intent. EA, they've done Battlefront 2 is actually a fantastic game in a lot of ways, but it does have some pretty severe issues.
It certainly does.
Loot boxes straight up. That was Battlefront 2 was at the height of the loot box controversy.
Yeah, it was indeed. They had to reel that one all back. It's an interesting one with Lucasfilm though, because the EA license in particular has been a talking point for a while. How do the Lego games fit into all this? Because they've been making Star Wars Lego games throughout this last decade, and it's just not. Is it the EA obviously don't own those developers? It's Warner Brothers, so. Just like a weird Lego gets away with it.
I wonder if at the time when they give the license out the IP to EA, that there's already existing other contracts with Warner Brothers for the Lego games. That was probably negotiated EA probably went, okay, these are the Lego games. They're not really going to be contributing, like in conflict with what we're doing. Yeah, we're happy for whatever reason.
I suppose, yeah, it's a different arm of demographic, isn't it? You've got your... Ideally, as much as I do love the Lego games, it's the kind of... Like, the Lego games are great. I'd love to see them on Stadia, but they're definitely aimed at a different audience. As opposed
it's completely different genre to anything that EA has even come close to with the Star Wars title.
That's very point. But yeah, it's interesting. So everything's brought under that banner. So you've got like the Galaxy of Heroes on mobile. You've got the Sims Batu expansion packs. And they all kind of just fit under one umbrella, which is just nice to see. But obviously with Lucasfilm Games kind of having that resurgence now, or that rebrand as such, it also brings a bunch of other titles that have kind of been laying long dormant. We've got back in like the 80s and 90s, not unfortunately, but Lucasfilm obviously didn't just make Star Wars games. They did absolutely tons when they were down as LucasArts. We've got Secret Monkey Island. I think they did Day of the Tentacle, or like the point and click stuff like Full Throttle. I've never played Sam & Max, but I've heard it's got quite a cult following of a fan base to it. But all of those obviously could have a bit of a reprise as well under this rebranding. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Did you ever have a chance, Richie, to play any of those particular games back in the day?
No, I've definitely played Lucasfilm games before, because I've seen the logo loads of times other than just on Star Wars, but I just can't recall off the top of my head what it actually was that I've played.
And how about you, Tom? Played any Lucasfilm games?
Yep, absolutely. I definitely have to say that I've played a lot, probably way too much of the Monkey Island franchise. I just have this innate love for those sort of like point and click adventure games, and the comedy that just comes with like the story of like Guybrush Threepwood is just incredible. It holds a near dear place to my heart in sort of like the outside of the Star Wars universe, the LucasArts games. That's sort of really where I sort of have my experience with LucasArts games. Absolutely loved that series.
Yeah, it leads for exciting things in the future, and I can't wait to see who they're going to farm it out to, because I think the good thing with all of the smaller IP and Star Wars is I would just love to see a world where we get like indie Star Wars games. Could you imagine like the team who made Celeste given just the Star Wars IP to create some kind of like side-scrolling action game in like that 16-bit art style?
Are you talking about a version of The Mandalorian, but it's Jetpack Joyride?
Yes, I'd take that. Yeah, Baby Yoda's at the end of each level, and you've got to try and get to him. Yeah, see, and that would make so much sense. It really, really would.
Give it to Bethesda, give like this big open world Star Wars games a la Skyrim, only with lightsabers.
Well, it's funny you should mention Bethesda, Richie, but they're already hard at work on a different IP. So off the back of, we had Lucasfilm Games announcement first, and then we were followed that up with the subtlest, with it being episode 69, we of course need a lovely tease in there. And Bethesda or Machine Games, I suppose, came out with a slow pan video with the Indiana Jones music playing in the background across a table of loads of notepads, guides, artifacts. And then it settled on, of course, trusty good old hat that he wears. And just that little tease was in the whip, of course, got me just like, oh, yes, I'm ready for an Indiana Jones game. Anyone who listens to this podcast knows I'm a massive fan of the Uncharted series, the Tomb Raider games as well. Absolutely. They are my quintessential go-to type of game for a single-player, story-driven narrative with characters. And Indiana Jones, guys. Amazing.
No, it's been a while since we've had an indie game, right?
I've got a confession to make. I haven't seen any Indiana Jones films since I was a kid. I really need to go back and rewatch them.
I thought you were going to say at all.
Just learning this.
At least you've seen them, rather than just...
I've seen them, but I don't think I've seen Crystal Skull. Was that the crap one?
Yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of that film before.
Yeah,
that was just one of them graphic novel spin-offs, wasn't it? That one.
Yeah, but it's one of them. It's been so long, when you're almost worried to go back and watch them just in case they don't hold up.
No, the originals are absolute classics. Like Raiders of the Lost Ark in particular, and Last Crusade with Sean Connery are just fantastic action.
Are they on Amazon Prime Video?
I'm not sure.
Because I currently have that active, so...
I always get confused. I always go to think like, they're on Disney Plus. Because obviously Disney owns everything, and they're also in the Disney theme parks. But Indiana Jones isn't owned by Disney; it's Lucasfilm still, right? But then, it's weird.
I know it's an interesting one. That one.
It's another Conrad thing. But aside from that, lads, Indiana Jones
leaves in 8 days. It leaves Prime in 8 days.
Oh, there you go. You've got 8 days, Richie. Get back to us next week and give us an update on your roaring reviews of the Indiana Jones OG trilogy. I watch them probably like every other year. I just kind of get that bug to go back and watch them. But in terms of games, obviously, we've now got this cycle of Indiana Jones led to like Tomb Raider then inspired Uncharted, and then now we're right back around where the Uncharted games inspired the Tomb Raider reboots. And then now here we are, we've got an Indiana Jones game coming out and a new movie. Remember Harrison Ford in like his ripe old age. I think he's in like nearly his 80s now. I think he's like mid-70s at least. Doing another movie. Going to kind of round out that Indiana Jones universe. But I do have a few questions for this. So we know this is being made by Machine Games within Bethesda, which is exciting in its own right, purely because Machine Games, famed for making games about killing Nazis, which of course Indiana Jones, that's how he spends his spare time. So we've got a real good potential for some epic Nazi killing if it is to come to that kind of storyline. We do know the game takes place between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. So remember, for those who don't know, Temple of Doom is actually a prequel, which I remember finding that out as an adult thinking like, what? Because obviously they come out sequentially, but just prequels, it doesn't really go above and beyond to make it known that it's a prequel. So it takes place between those two movies, so that fits them in a distinct timeline, so we know Nazis are a thing, they're about. But more importantly, a few questions for me that I'd like to put to you guys is, one, probably to you, Tom. Is this going to have Harrison Ford's likeness?
I have a sneaking suspicion it probably isn't. I think it's going to be sort of one of those uncanny valley type moments like Spider-Man coming out on the PS5 with like that Tom Holland-esque, but not quite.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like they have to do it justice and go with it. But I have this sneaking suspicion they're going to try to skim around it and maybe sort of create their own sort of, because they're creating their own story anyway.
Yeah.
I imagine potentially not.
See,
how about you,
me,
Richie?
They either need to go all in, get Harrison Ford into just do the VO and everything, or make it as distinguishable from Harrison Ford as possible while still retaining the characteristics. Because I think when you go halfway to making them look like the same character, but then it's voice acted differently, it exaggerates that it's not Harrison Ford.
You have that Avengers sort of issue.
It's a bit of a tricky one, really, because like you mentioned, Tom, Avengers is one thing, but a lot of the time those characters are masked by like a suit or a costume or something. This is, let's face it, this is just a guy in a leather jacket with a whip. There's not really many characteristics other than it's distinctly Harrison Ford, who is a very well-known face. So you're totally right. There's a very fine line, I feel, between getting this right and wrong. But similar to your point, Richie, is he going to be committed? One, how much would it cost? I mean, he got like 15-20 million for doing his cameo in the new Star Wars movie. So it's going to cost a pretty penny. So I very much doubt him doing VO, especially at his age, is really on the cards. But then it goes back to the uncanny valley of if it doesn't sound like him, how much does that lose its appeal all of a sudden?
It depends on, I think, on him and how much he cares about the character. It clearly does, because he's still making films where he's playing that character. But I don't. You never know. The deal might have even been grouped in with with his film deal as well. It's like, you're going to do one game or something.
Potentially, but at the same time, you also know that Troy Baker's sitting there rubbing his hands together, thinking, I am absolutely auditioning for that role.
He could do.
Bear in mind, this is all speculation that we don't even know what sort of game it's going to be.
True.
Yeah, well, again, that kind of goes. Obviously, Machine Games, all the Wolfenstein games they've done. I think the only thing other than Wolfenstein they've worked on was it was Quake DLC or something, or Quake multiplayer or something like that. And it's all been first person. Which, again, it would get rid of the problem with having a facial likeness to him for the most part, but then that would surely undercut the whole point of an Indiana Jones game if you don't get to see him with the whip and the hat climbing stuff and running. I very much just want an Uncharted game with the Indiana Jones theme tune and a similar kind of like ancient relic he's looking for and uncovering the mysteries with puzzles and clues. I just want Uncharted with Indiana Jones' IP, basically.
But the mechanics work perfectly for that sort of game, so it seems weird to sort of go down a different alley, doesn't it, really? Like, I don't see an Indiana Jones game working so successfully as a first person. I feel like it's got to be that sort of like adventure type game instead.
I think if you look at Uncharted, it's so heavily based on Indiana Jones That's exactly what we want to see. We just want to see Uncharted. Only it's
an indie fan game.
Nathan,
yeah. Do it. Get it involved. So I'm very excited for that. My next follow-up question, which I think is very pertinent, being Stadia players, obviously, is will it come to Stadia? Because let's remember, Bethesda were acquired by Microsoft not only a few months ago. So then this poses the next question: will this ever even come to other platforms aside from Xbox? So again, I'll flip it over. I'll throw it over to you first, Richie. Will we see the Indiana Jones title from Bethesda, who we know have played quite well with Stadia up until this point?
Yeah.
Will we see it on Stadia or elsewhere?
This is the thing with Bethesda that we've been talking about since the Microsoft acquisition. It's like, who knows? We know that Bethesda are committed for things like Elder Scrolls 6 to come to multiple platforms, but Microsoft also have a recent history of playing quite well with others. They've got quite chummy with Nintendo, for example. And obviously Xbox has a one foot in the PC market anyway. But it's really hard to say with this being a completely effectively a new IP for Bethesda.
Yeah. Tom, what do you thoughts?
I think it's all down to the value of the IP, isn't it, really? At the end of the day, how much can Microsoft/Bethesda make back on that like original deal? And I hate to think about it from a business perspective, but the IP is loved. It's an older IP, but it's still a fan favorite. I feel like it should be put out mass market. It should be put out to everybody.
I agree, but do you think Indiana Jones is now more of a cult IP rather than a mainstream one?
No.
Yeah,
I don't.
I do. I think it is. I think it's more cult now at this point. I think there's just that love for it. I mean, I'm not gonna say that a new Indiana Jones film wouldn't be hugely successful, but it's hard to say because it's been a while.
Yeah, that is true.
It has been a while.
That's my point. It's like if you talk to most like 15, 16-year-olds, have they even seen an Indiana Jones film? I've already said.
Would they be interested in seeing an Indiana Jones film?
Here's the thing: it's not Star Wars. It's Star Wars has had a legacy of continually every generation, basically bringing out a new series.
That's a very good point. I think I might just be blinded by nostalgia then at this point.
I was going to say, I feel it's hard to say to a diehard Indiana Jones fan. It's hard to say, but there are some concerns.
Yeah, but a great point though about the IP, Tom, because it is probably more dormant. But on the flip side of that, Microsoft, remember their promise was our titles from exclusive studios come day and date to Game Pass. Now, if you're Lucasfilm or Disney, for that matter, or whoever the hell owns the Indiana Jones one, going to Microsoft, if they can only promise that, one, this game is going to go on Game Pass day one, what percentage of the Game Pass subscriptions now go towards... Like, the profit margins are surely more convoluted now Game Pass is involved, because then if they're looking for a guaranteed return on investment and Microsoft can only come back with, well, we don't know how many sales we're going to get because everyone on Game Pass gets it for free, and we don't know how well the new Series X is going to be at that stage when the game's released in 2 to 3 years, because this isn't happening anytime soon. There's a lot of interesting balls to juggle in the air at this moment in time, I guess, with it.
To cross-platform, multi-platform anyway, because if you're in the ecosystem, you got Game Pass, you get it for free as part of subscription. Everyone else then needs to buy it. So if you're only in the Sony ecosystem, that's just money in Microsoft's pocket at this point.
Yeah,
but they can still use, plays best on Series X. Get it free with Game Pass.
Yeah.
Or even if they wanted to be really cutthroat about it, they could have the 6 month or 1 year exclusivity deal for it, and just say it's going to be exclusive to Xbox for X amount of time, but we will be releasing it multi-platform after that. I don't think that's the smart move. I think what Richie says is probably bang on the money. I think it's going to be more of a marketing push, as you say, to say get it on Xbox, you get it for free as part of Game Pass, or buy it elsewhere. Because then it's going to get people thinking about value for money.
It depends when the game comes out. For example, if it was coming out in November, for example, then that short-term exclusivity might make more sense, because then it becomes a system seller. Where if it comes out in something like in April, it probably doesn't matter that much in terms of console sales.
So then, to wrap a whip around this whole thing, gentlemen, yes or no, Tom, will it come to Stadia?
Oh, will it come to Stadia? No.
Richie?
And I hate that. I hate saying that.
I want to say yes, but I don't think Bethesda is supporting Stadia that strongly outside of Doom at the moment.
Interesting.
So okay. I'm going to go with a no as well.
Elder Scrolls Online.
I'm gonna say
yes.
I'm gonna say yes, just because I would love to see, and I'd love to see John Rhys Davies reprise his role as well. We'll put his little red fez cap on and get him in the mocap suit. I'm sure he'd love that. But let's not stray too far from some more Lucasfilm games, because if we're going to flip flop back to the original story,
there's more.
There's more. It was also the following day, so this is 3 days of news on the bounce we pretty much got. They also announced that they are making a game in tandem with Ubisoft.
Ooh.
So although they've got a legacy of obviously games with EA, they've got a 10-year license and such. Ubisoft seeing it as the start of a long-term collaboration between Ubisoft and Disney to work on a Star Wars title. They've handed it over to the developers of The Division 2, which are Massive Entertainment, I think they go by. Obviously famed for the Division kind of world as well. This kind of throws open the next question to you both as well, is how excited are you for a Star Wars game made by the Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Watch Dogs Legion, Immortals Phoenix Rising, Division? There's just so many, Rainbow Six Siege, there's so many possibilities giving this IP to Ubisoft. In some vein, they're very similar to EA, but then on the flip side, not so much. Tom, I'll throw it back over to you then. Ubisoft and Star Wars, match made in heaven?
I'm going to give a really spicy take here. I do not want to see a Star Wars game built on the Assassin's Creed engine. I don't want to see that because I am scared that it will be too much. I'm scared that it will... whenever I think about the Assassin's Creed games, as much as I love them and as much as I enjoy the gameplay, I always focus in on the bugs and the issues with like the character animations, and I think it feels quite basic. So I don't want to see that from a Star Wars IP. That being said, by Massive Entertainment, The Division, Tom Clancy games and so on, I'm all for that, particularly if I get to play as something like, a Rebel Commando, or if I get to play as part of the Empire or something. We go for more of that sort of like ground-based trooper sort of gameplay as opposed to being a Jedi. I'm all for it. I'm absolutely for that, and I'm super excited to see that. Give me that sort of game. Whether it is going to be open world, I believe they've confirmed that already. Haven't they? Yeah. So I'm hoping it's going to be something akin to Wildlands, something along those sorts of lines. There, I'd love something to that extent.
Well, for me, I'm basically closer because it's is it confirmed that it's going to be the developer of the Division 2 working on it?
Yes, it is, yeah. So they've said so far, they've said they're actively recruit for the project. The game is going to utilise the Snowdrop engine, Tom, so that it is going to be in the same engine as the Assassin's Creed games. Division 2 director...
But also the Division,
Division 2 director Julian Garrity is going to direct the project as well.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm looking at is, okay, what happens if I put a Star Wars skin over the Division 2? Would that work? And my answer is a very much yes. Yes, that would work very, very well. And again, it'd be moving away from the traditional Star Wars lightsaber style combat, but Star Wars as a franchise has shown that it can carry itself without Jedi. You look at Rogue One and you look at The Mandalorian as perfect examples. Imagine like the gritty side of Star Wars that you see in like Rogue One and Mandalorian, which you also see in The Division.
Yeah.
But instead of using, an M16, you're using a blaster.
Imagine you're actually doing missions in a region of Coruscant, because we've not really had Coruscant in that many games before for Star Wars, or even going to other places like, you talk about planets that don't really get mentioned in movies, like Nar Shaddaa and stuff like that as well, where you go into like the seedy underbelly of these different worlds. Being able to play in those... Yeah, absolutely.
Coruscant would be perfect for me because you see it in the movies and so quite clean and crisp at like the higher tiers, but I'm thinking like Rebels and Clone Wars, you occasionally see like the gritty underbelly of it. Like there's a bit more poverty and stuff. There's some really interesting stories that can be told from them.
Well, remember 1313, that one of the many cancelled EA projects that was focusing on that seedy, gritty underworld that was like 100, like 1,000 and whatever levels down below in Coruscant's underground. So yeah, it's fantastic. Totally what you were saying, Richie. I could picture take Coruscant or Cloud City or whatever it may be, and just give me like a team of either it doesn't even have to be rebels or Empire. It can just be like smaller factions within those worlds.
I am leaning towards you're playing as a faction of the rebels, just like a more like stealthy section, rather like a more special forces rather than the main rebel army. So you're based in Coruscant to try and gather information about what the Empire's up to. Yeah. Maybe at the start of the rebellion. Yeah. Like just after it initially forms.
What about it takes place during Order 66 and you are the clone troopers and your targets are the Jedi? Any Force sensitive users, you get your criteria, you get your point. We've got him, he's on Felucia, he's on Cloud City, wherever he may be. You need to track him down, finding intel, hostages, torture, whatever it may be, to find him, and then at the end of it you get a payoff of a boss fight of a Jedi or Force sensitive user or something like that.
Or even take it another step, you could be a bounty hunter within the galaxy and you have to travel from planet to planet to try to find out where your target is and gather intel. The same sort of premise, but you're just going to try to find particular targets. I love these ideas. I'm willing to see these fleshed out.
I know, that's the problem. But this is the great thing, right? Now it's not exclusive to EA. This can be farmed out to anyone. So we should be able to see select games. And I think the Division developers are fantastic for this type of open world game, because they've done it with New York, so they can do a cityscape, no problem whatsoever, and in kind of weave a narrative story. What I do really like is the fact that the Division 1 and 2, they have a concurrent single player story driven throughout. So yes, it's multiplayer is the focus, but there is still a really good in-depth story buried within that. And I think the great thing with Star Wars is it's not just necessarily about the Skywalkers as such, even though the movies would have you believe everybody knows who they are in this galaxy of billions and billions of people. Everyone just happens to know these 10 individuals, and they just happen to bump into each other on a planet coincidentally. But in terms of the actual games, there's so many side characters, there's so many stories and races and people and places to visit and go and see. The possibilities are literally endless, and I'm super excited for this one. As a quick side note, this Division 2 developers, Massive, are also supposed to be working on an Avatar game.
Sorry, what's Avatar again?
Exactly. So they're obviously doing either is that being canned or delayed, or if they basically shuffled the cards and went, you know what, Star Wars is an IP that is going to make us way more money than an Avatar one potentially is. But yeah, just a nice reminder for everyone out there. There's an Avatar
meant to be like multiple Avatar films in the works, and I just don't understand why.
It was supposed to be like 2021 or 2, and then every other year after.
The film was fine, but it was one of them. It was more about the technology that went into it rather than the actual quality of the story.
Yeah,
that's the only reason why people talk about it now. Just
I'd rather watch Indiana Jones again than Avatar, if I'm honest. Pocahontas in space, some would say.
With Smurfs.
The Smurfs. Actually, speaking of which, Richie, in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, every one of the Frost Giants just looks like an Avatar character, right? One of the Na'vi.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, not much. Unfortunately, went into making them look very frosty, in my opinion. But alas. So yes, so we're getting new games, new Star Wars games. Before we wrap up on this story, though, I suppose it's worthwhile pointing out that, do we feel like this is a bit harsh on EA? Like, the deal doesn't end for another 2 years, and yet now Lucasfilm and stuff and Disney are coming out going, they're going to be making games, we're going to have these doing this. And EA must surely sat there going, guess that's our exclusive license not being renewed. It's kind of
that's one way to break the news.
I'd assume that they have spoken with EA about the license many times over the years, and already probably a couple of years ago they might have even told them that they're not going, have no intention of renewing, that they want to use other developers, but by all means we will still work with EA, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well,
and the thing to remember is this isn't Disney pulling the license away from EA. This is just going, no, your time's up.
Yeah. So that kind of leads us into the next story, of course, which is EA and Star Wars. EA obviously had to come out and make a statement off the back of this news, just in case anyone was thinking that Ubisoft were getting exclusivity and such. And EA very much came out and said, no, we're still working together to keep making games. Particularly individual account said we're proud with our long-standing collaboration with Lucasfilm Games. We will continue for years to come. Our talented teams have created some of the most successful games in the history of the Star Wars franchise, including Jedi Fallen Order, Battlefront, Galaxy of Heroes, and Squadrons. We love Star Wars, and we look forward to creating more exciting experiences for players to enjoy in the years to come. And I suppose when you look at that, for all the troubles, Galaxy of Heroes made over $1 billion last year, which from a business standpoint cannot be snuffed at. Fallen Order, critically received, my game of the year last year, if it didn't come out at such a stupid time for Jeff Keighley. It's obviously now on Stadia as well, so I think that's definitely a franchise that is wholeheartedly going to continue.
Well, we know they're definitely creating like a couple of sequels to that. There should be a 3-parter, I believe, altogether. So they're certainly going strong with that.
Battlefront 3 or whatever that ends up being is probably potential, because we know they're supporting it. Battlefront 2 actually just had a free weekend this past weekend at the time of listening to this, so it's still there and it's still Star Wars. And I think we've mentioned, if we've not made it clear, it's clearly an IP that has legs, and it's worth millions upon millions, so it's not going anywhere.
Things like the launch of Battlefront was by far the worst part, and there's things like I didn't like star cards, the single player story went a bit rubbish in the middle, but the game plays phenomenally well. It's a good franchise. It just needs a bit more refinement.
Yeah, and I think we'll see more. But again, this is the great thing. Like, we can have multiple games across multiple fronts now, and we don't have to pigeonhole them into one particular developer or genre. So if we get a Battlefront Galaxy, which is like a games as a service version, fantastic. Fold all them different titles into one. If we get more, like Tom, you said, 2 more titles in the Jedi Fallen Order trilogy, fantastic. And then we get Ubisoft's title, we get these little indie games. You've got your mobile games, your little sim DLC tie-in. More the merrier, right? Like, yes, there's probably more risk.
Can't deny it.
The only thing I think that comes into it is how hard it's now going to be to shoehorn a unique story in to the canon, because like, how many more Jedi stories can we have where we're under the impression there was only Luke and Leia, and now all of a sudden every other story you hear, there's about 20,000-30,000 more just hidden amongst the galaxy.
Well, there's multiple eras of Star Wars that they can look at. You can look at the High Republic days, the Old Republic days, the Empire days, First Order time. There's so many different eras that you could look onto. So you can. It must be quite almost great if you're sitting down to write a Star Wars thing, because you can just pick an era and go, well, we haven't discussed much in this era, so I'll just set it away from whatever the main Skywalker stuff is going on, and we're good.
We're good to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great to see that EA just isn't losing out completely, because like I said, as much as they've been kind of in hot water a couple of times, I do honestly think the games have such a sharp level of polish, and it really does bring those worlds to absolute life. Like, I know playing Battlefront and being on like Hoth and stuff for the first time, and like that twilight nighttime was just visually the best rendered like part of Star Wars I've ever been able to play in. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And like I said, Squadrons with VR and Vader Immortal is so immersive. Just the IP's rich for the picking. So long may it continue. Long may it continue. But that finally moves us away, gentlemen, from the Star Wars Disney Lucasfilm conversation and on to another exciting potential thing. Very Stadia focused, this one. In the latest APK file that was dropped out, our friends over at 9to5 Google did some digging, and they stumbled across something called Project Hailstorm.
Ooh.
Project Hailstorm.
That sounds interesting.
It does. So, in and amongst all like the usual like random stuff, this could, of course, just be the title for a search bar. This is Project Hailstorm is finally having a search bar within the Stadia store. But I thought I have my own theories, but I think it's probably nothing as big as we think it's going to be. Tom, I'll throw it over to you first. Project Hailstorm. Give me your best tinfoil hat theories and
All
suggestions.
right. I mean, I've already shared my thoughts with you guys off camera, but I'm more than happy to do it on the show. So the original controller when it came out was nicknamed Project Yeti. Keeping with that sort of like snow theme, Project Hailstorm. We've been talking about for a while whether these sell-offs of the Premiere kits and so on has been anything to do with them considering new hardware and so on, offering all these deals. I've been wondering whether Hailstorm might be a new package, or more in particular, a pro controller, something along those lines as well, something with a bit more modernization in terms of the features that it offers. So looking to match the current gen tech of controller, but from a Stadia perspective, I'd be really interested if it was something like that. And it might be a bit of a big thought, but I'm very hopeful that it is, because that's where I want to be putting my money right now.
Richie, how about
That's
yourself?
my take.
Yeah, well, I kind of took Tom's idea when we were talking about this offline. I thought, well, if it's not going to be a controller, what else could it be? What if it's a Wi-Fi mouse and keyboard? And they're going to support things that way a bit more. So you could play via your Chromecast with mouse and keyboard. So it opens up the ecosystem even more. But, or maybe it's a dongle that you can plug into any wireless Wi-Fi keyboard. It's really hard to know. It could be anything.
I mean, yeah, it literally, obviously, just buried within the coding of an APK file never gives us much insight. But it's interesting that most of the other stuff in there, it just has titles. So some of the other things they picked out was just like capture, blog post, activity, friends. We also on the Chrome browser we got a scroll bar this week, gentlemen.
Yes.
So when you're not just scrolling for 10, you can actually click that little son of a bitch and scroll it all the way down the bottom as quick as you like. But yeah, the fact that they've titled it as a project seemingly knows that they have to cover up a particular wording, otherwise it would give the game away. I hope it's not just StateShare's secret name. Like that would be a little bit of a disappointment.
That would be a weird leak now. Like,
because they've already spoken
let's leak
about
the name of the project after we've already told you.
Yeah,
it doesn't comes out this week.
It doesn't fall on the timeline right at all.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. But yeah, Project Hailstorm. I threw it out on Twitter and said it could be a Stadia specific engine running within the well, because we've got Snowdrop, Frostbite, so keeping on that trend of cold things, a Hailstorm would fit that perfectly. We presume, right? We've just presumed Stadia games are going to run on Unity or the Unreal Engine, maybe. There's like one. We don't really know much about the games.
Any open source like stuff, anything that you can just pay a license fee and use. Just
curious,
at least for now. Which I think is actually better, because if you start working on proprietary engines, then you can sometimes hit issues with the engine, like Telltale, for example.
Oh yes, we won't go into that here.
But
it's interesting. So I definitely think some thought's gone into hiding what it is. Otherwise, it wouldn't be down as Project Hailstorm. It would actually showcase just whatever it is, pretty much in some granular, boring coding word that we usually see in these things. But it's great to see that there's something on the horizon that they've got planned in. But I hope it's really just not the search bar, because that would be terrible.
Yeah.
But where the hell is that? Where the hell is that search bar?
We just got a scroll bar, Chris. It'll turn up.
It'll turn up eventually.
If they turn around and say Project Hailstorm is a search bar, that's all of this hype out the window.
Yeah, it certainly is.
To be fair, the hype is entirely created by us.
Looking
at someone who's broke down the APK. So if it turns out Project Hailstorm is a search bar, we got our search bar.
We finally got it. Speaking of things we finally haven't got yet, though, I'll give my Chris's weekly catch up on where the fuck is FIFA, because it's a special day today, gentlemen. It's a special one. We are celebrating a special number. We've hit a century of days now. 100 days FIFA 21 has been out on other platforms, probably heavily discounted as well at this point. Past the halfway point of the season, we must be now as we trickle into the new year. Not much more to say on that, but coming this winter, remember, coming this winter. Of course, I joke, I know it's coming out in winter. Maybe it's Project Hailstorm as FIFA.
Just raining footballs.
Raining multi-ball. Anyway, though, let's move on to great things in the future. And of course, this past week we had CES taking place digitally in a very different format this year. Of course, the Consumer Electronics Showcase is one of the events that takes place usually every year in America, usually Vegas, I think it takes place in, where they showcase all the things from televisions to mobile devices to random gadgets and such. It was probably one of the few events last year which was allowed to go ahead before shit hit the fan and everything changed for the worse. But we did get some interesting news from LG. None other than LG this year came out at CES and showcased their new range of fancy televisions coming to the world.
Lovely.
And within that was a couple of little nuggets. One of them that pertains very much to us three. Stadia is going to be baked into their WebOS integration on the homepage of the screens from the 2021 range, starting off, I think, later this year, probably spring onwards, or maybe later in the year. This is huge, right?
Great. Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Because we recently bought Holly's mum an LG TV, and my first thought was I didn't even realize what operating system was on it. So when I went to try, I was thinking, maybe I could try sideloading the Stadia APK on it. No, can't do it because it's not Android based. It is their own operating system on there. So to hear LG supporting it, I think LG take up about 20% of the global market, like roughly about 20% of the global market for TV units, smart units. Mm-hmm. So that's a massive chunk of people.
Yeah.
Like if you look in 2021 onwards, if you say 20% of the market is using a smart TV by LG, that's a huge number of players that you could possibly pick up there, casual gamers or not.
Yeah, and there's some good promotional stuff you could do in that. You could just start pairing, buy a new LG TV and get a Stadia Premier Edition controller in with the box.
Or Project Hailstorm.
Yeah,
maybe Project Hailstorm.
Yeah,
but I could see Google very much doing that because I think just having the Stadia app built into the TV, but then not giving anyone a device to actually to play the games would just mean people see the app and go, I'm not interested in that.
How do I actually play it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If I've got my TV, how do you have to play it? I have to spend 50 quid on a controller. I'm not interested.
Or I can see a lot of people into it.
Yeah, because the actual LG TVs, because I own two. I've got one in my living room, and I've recently just bought a brand new one. And thankfully, they have, I think, confirmed that the 2020 models are going to get the update as well. So my new TV that's on the wall right here in this very room, hopefully will have Stadia built in. Because actually, last week or the week before, I remember I made a fuss about saying the Chromecast with the plug doesn't allow it to sit flush on the wall. But if it's going to be baked in with an update, the operating system, of the WebOS that runs on these TVs is very similar to the Google TV. You get all of your multitude of icons across the bottom, and you can just flick things through like Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime. You can update apps, you can remove them. Weirdly enough, in the UK, my TV in the living room has the Channel 4, Channel 5 on-demand features. The brand new TV doesn't have them. And a quick search, apparently they didn't renew their license for that, so those apps are not on the new models, but they are on the old one. So if I want to catch up on some classic Coronation Street in my living room, I can do so, but not on the brand new one, which is a weird, again, it's like licensing and app deals.
Yeah, the APK exists for that. I mean, we're getting off topic of Stadia here.
100% Coronation Street, Emmerdale, and all other things.
Our Audrey Coronation Street.
Of course.
See, I see the point of like this, and that I was actually during the Stadia Source Round Table like last week that I actually changed my thoughts on this because personally, I do not care in the slightest about smart features in the TV. I've got a smart TV downstairs. It only has smart features because all TVs have smart features now. I have not used any of them. I just don't care about it. But there again, this is something like Chris, you've just said a use case for it. It's getting other people in their ecosystem. So.
That's it. And again, Richie, you got to remember, ourselves and a lot of people who are gamers, we're quite tech-centric. So you've got your Chromecast, you're more than comfortable with casting from your phone or using your little remote that came with your Google TV. But the vast majority of people, and that 20% of the market share which Tom's talking about there, having the Stadia app baked in on the home screen, so they literally turn on the TV, there's Netflix, there's Disney Plus, there's Stadia, there's Amazon Prime, there's thingy. If they scroll across to that just by chance, that Stadia icon, and it says it has an advert for Assassin's Creed Valhalla or the new Call of Duty, whatever the future of Stadia may look like, they've got it blazoned across the big 60-inch television screen, and all it has on the bottom is a little thing saying, connect your Bluetooth controller. Because, as we mentioned, a lot of these TVs come with Bluetooth baked in. Go pick up your old controller, your Xbox, your PlayStation, your Switch, or a Stadia one if you happen to have it bundled in with the TV. Gaming ready, or gaming unleashed, or gaming, whatever they want to tag it as. And then that's mum and dad then thinking, why the hell am I buying myself or my kids a brand new expensive console when the TV in the house already does it? Sold. Your barrier to entry, it's there, baked into the TV. Go. Life's good, as LG would say.
Or minimalistic living room where all I've got on the TV on the wall and nothing else.
But that's the future we're going for. We're moving to all devices integrated in one place, aren't we? So baked into one thing, and that's it. That's it. In a nutshell, it's just we're just getting everything just baked into one device, and I'm all for that. Bring it on.
Yeah, and this is the future Stadia have been shouting about since day one. Play anywhere across any device.
Yes.
And it is that down to that simplistic factor that if you've got a TV and you've got some old tech like a controller lying around, you can play the latest titles like Cyberpunk 2077 when it's finally been fixed on your TV without a massive. Let's face it, the Series X and the PlayStation 5 are huge in comparison. And again, we think about demographics like our own house. Not everybody has that retail space in their living rooms. Again, Tom, you've just moved into your new house. Finding that place for everything to go is important, and we've got to remember gaming. Asking your partner to put up with a massive block tower of a PS5,
which is ugly,
which is arguably ugly, in your living room is a conversation that needs to be had. Whereas, kind of again, it's a small thing, but Stadia alleviates all that because it's built into the TV, and it's great. And I think LG embracing this is huge. Something I brought up on the Stadia Source roundtable, which we were on. If you've not seen that, go check that out. Myself and Richie jumped on, talked about all the latest news this week as well. For me, Samsung came out this week with their Unpacked event, and they announced the Galaxy S21 range. Yep. Part of that conversation that they showcased was that the new Galaxy range is also going to integrate Android and Google into their user face more. For example, things like their video calling are now going to use Google Duo. A lot of their interface is going to be blended in with that Android One UI a little bit more. So there's conversations happening there, as always, with Google and Samsung and all the other developers. And for me, Samsung are another one of the biggest TV makers in the globe as well. But they have a partnership with Microsoft and xCloud at the moment to push that on their devices. I think television could be another great conversation to have, and I would not be surprised if in 2 to 3 years' time, when we see this event next year, it's all the Samsung TVs have it built in. The year after, all the Sony TVs have it built in. And just like that, Stadia is in almost every home that has a brand new TV by 2025, for example. So as we're on the cusp of the next generation of consoles, and we'll start talking about our PS6s and our Xbox, Series 2, whatever the hell they decide to name in convention for that, Stadia is everywhere. Everywhere.
I wonder what Sony are doing with PS Now, because they haven't updated that really since PS5, and now Microsoft and Google are throwing their cloud-based offerings directly onto TVs. Sony must be looking at their TV line going, can we get PS Now on that?
Well, it's quite interesting, really. It's not a news article that we've got listed to talk about this week, but there are rumors, and I will just say it's rumors. There's nothing that's come out yet, but we know about Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda. But there are discussions at the moment saying that Amazon and Google, I won't say Stadia, but Amazon and Google are looking at the moment at buying up quite a few different developers. To start collecting these. Now, Sony is in the discussion for for some of these purchases, but very, very much on the backside of things. So I am really interested to see where Sony are going next as well, like you say, Richie, because they're not really doing much with PS Now. And we sort of, as a cloud gaming podcast with Stadia in particular,
the launch of Stadia, and xCloud, they kind of started removing the nails from the coffin, but then. The coffin's now just open, but it's still a coffin.
Yeah. It's still
I mean,
there.
it's a risk. Is it back to the PS3 days where their own kind of brashness and bravado is going to be their undoing? Because we've said many times, like, PlayStation now just isn't on par with anything else. But that's obviously
the networking on the PS4 is arguably not good enough for it, though. So that might be why they're holding off until they get more PS5s into the world.
Yeah, but again, that's a whole conversation for a different day. I'm sure they're going to have to combat it with something eventually, because there's too many big companies making strides into it. So who knows? They could maybe strike up a deal with Stadia at one point. Play Stadia.
Yeah.
PlayStation, something like that. I don't know, we'll see. Right, let's have a quick roundup of a few other stories just to round up the news this week. We have a few delays, as probably expected for this year, let's be honest, with COVID pandemic and stuff continuing. We're no doubt going to hear from this as the year trickles through. Always a disappointing thing, but Warner Brothers recently announced a Hogwarts Legacy game. They put out a tweet very similar to your CD Projekt Red messages that tend to come out now. You have a poster of the game and the font. It's been delayed until 2022. So they said they thanked the fans for the tremendous reaction to the announcement. But essentially, it's been pushed back to 2022. No particular release date. We didn't have one anywhere for this year. But gentlemen, it's probably going to happen a couple of times moreover before the year's out. We saw Far Cry get pushed back as well. But just excitement on the Hogwarts Express so far for you two? I don't know if we've covered it.
Yeah, it's a game that I'd like to play. But again, we'll wait until they're done. We only found out about it recently, so we'll just wait until it's done. Yeah, wait till the oven's finished.
I think it's an early enough delay, right? It's not like right in August time when everyone's thinking, isn't this game out shortly? And then they announce it. It's getting ahead of the curve, I think.
Yeah, for me, it's one of them games where I do like Harry Potter as a franchise, but I haven't really thought too much about this game. Like, it's like, when it first got announced, cool, that sounds awesome, and then haven't thought about it till we found out it got delayed. So
yeah. It's similar with a lot of the Warner Brothers games. Like, we've been waiting for quite a while. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the Batman titles gets pushed back a bit further potentially as well. Yeah. Even though we saw some gameplay.
With potentially selling off the gaming leg and stuff, didn't they? And then decided not to. So I imagine that's probably disrupted things quite a lot internally.
Yeah, certainly. And
I think this year, 2021, is going to be the year of delays. Just knock-on effects from the whole coronavirus pandemic. It's bound to happen, like you said before.
There's only so much you can do. So kind of following on from that, then we might as well cover it here. But the Riders Republic game, which I think we only spoke about last week, that Ubisoft title again was due out February 25th, I think, so not that far off at all, just over 1 month away. Has also been delayed, but interestingly enough, they've not actually said when it's been delayed to. So just to have something so close and then not say, it's March 25th or it's April. To just say it's been delayed. Should we read too much into that, or should we just say they just don't have a date?
I think they probably just don't want to give a date till they know, because this is the problem CD Projekt Red had a bit, where they kept delaying it, kept giving new dates. And it wasn't... I think when you do that, you end up piling more pressure onto yourself. Like,
I wonder whether part of this is down to one of the big selling features for this game was that you could have like 50 plus people playing in one sort of I don't want to call it a server, but sort of like a persisting world, essentially.
An instance.
An instance. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. So 50 plus people playing in a single instance. I'm wondering whether like the issues with like PS5 scalping and stuff like that has caused them to make a decision of maybe we'll delay it and just wait until there's a few more of those consoles out there first of all before we push it live. Perhaps. Again, tinfoil hat. That's the way I like to think, but.
It does make me kind of think, polishing. Though, like, what games do we actually have coming out now for this first quarter? Because I've joked and said many times, like, this would be ideal prime time real estate now to drop something like Watch Dogs Legion, Ubisoft, rather than in the peak of the industry as busiest period. Because now here we are, we've literally got Hitman 3 this coming week.
Yeah,
and then that is it as far as I'm aware for like big titles. We've got no Sony exclusives as far as I'm aware. Xbox is just silent.
it's typically in the retail space, January is one of the lowest performing months because it's just after Christmas, so it's the Christmas financial hangover, and that's why everything goes on sale to try and push that out the door.
Yeah.
So I don't think January is great for new releases. February, however, can be, because usually if people just like, okay, I just have a pretty conservative month in January to get back to where I usually like to be to cover Christmas. Going into February, here's a new game. Yeah. It's been maybe about 2 or 3 months since the last big title at that point.
Mm-hmm. So I just think it's a big missed opportunity because all well, it's quiet in the real world. The fact is that it's cold for the most part. Everyone's at home. Every month should be approached the same. If the title's good and big enough, it should do well regardless of the time of the year now. But here we are. We're heading into a barren spell, so let's just hope the news trickles through for Stadia. Otherwise, this show may be getting a bit shorter. But unlike this week, which is certainly not short, let's trickle on nicely to our bright yellow counterparts over at CD Projekt Red. We've got an update, ladies and gentlemen, on the bunch of patches. They dropped a video this week where one of the bigwigs came out and essentially addressed all of the problems that they've had since launch. Of course, for better or for worse, the game was successful, but it's let's just say it's done a lot of damage to their brand and their faith and their trust, I suppose, in the consumer. But they have given us a roadmap, which we've wanted for Stadia for a long time. The roadmap looks like, I think there's a hot patch dropped this week. There's a couple of hot fixes as well. But basically, you've got patch 1.1, 1.2. They've said they're still going to go ahead with a free DLC, which was always promised. And we know they did that with The Witcher 3, so that's to be expected. And they're still going ahead with a free next-gen console update, probably at the back end of 2022. So they've committed to fixing things. But for me, if you two got a chance to watch the video, they also maybe spoke for too long. You know, when sometimes you're trying to apologise, and the more you apologise, the worse you make it by just opening your mouth.
Yeah. Apology video shouldn't be like a 5-minute epic. It should be 1 or 2 minutes. Say what you need to say, and then get out.
Yeah, there's just like...
Otherwise you end up digging the hole.
Yeah, so I'll just quote one of the things which made me laugh from the video. And he essentially addresses it and says, our testing did not show many of the issues you experienced while playing the game. Sorry, but the millions and millions of people who bought this on PS4 and original Xbox will definitely... like, how does this get... Come on, how can you come out and say, we're really, really sorry, our testing did not pick up on all of the bugs and issues that you've brought to our attention right now? Like, come on, dude, who are you kidding?
One of the things he did say is, and I think they might have been a bit naive, they focused on the development for the PC side, and then they only started encountering issues when they were porting it to everything else, where I think they probably expected to port it to PS4, drop a couple of sliders and probably be done, almost. And they clearly weren't.
Yeah, and also...
So I think it really blindsided them, like, the problems that can come from porting.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, but either of you two jump back into Cyberpunk at all?
It's on the list at some point. If I hadn't picked up VR recently, I'd probably be playing it at the moment.
Yeah.
Not since I rolled credits. But I've actually almost took like a semi-break from games, so that's like 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So I haven't been playing anything big, so...
Let's get him off the podcast, Tom.
Yeah.
I like how you said, before yeah.
I'm a fake gamer.
Fake gamer. But yeah, either way, obviously they did have to come out and address things. They've also clarified a couple of things, like they won't be forcing the staff to crunch. It'll all be done in a reasonable manner of time, and it'll all be free. And basically, they're just trying to work it back and try and save some face. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so final news stories of the week. We heard some news about StateShare coming to Hitman 3 this upcoming week. They basically came out in this week's blog post and just highlighted how it's going to work. Showed us some images, some static screenshots of how you'll be able to share the link, include your game state within that link when you share it to other people, and just clarified a couple of things that we already knew. So as Hitman, if you were to take part in a particular activity with weapons and such, you're going to be able to share those with other people. So if I was killing people with a certain weapon that you hadn't unlocked, Richie, and then you jumped in through my share link, you would have all the same weapons. Or maybe you would be able to take part in a level that you've not yet reached too. We're all excited. They've clarified it will be very different in different games. It's kind of on the developers how they can use this. It's kind of really just great to see it out there in the wild, as this was one of those promised things from way back in GDC 2019, I think. So here we are in 2021, finally seeing the fruits of those labours. But it's interesting because it's such a unique thing. I've seen it making the rounds a bit on the wider news journalism sites as something unique and different that no one else can offer at this moment in time. What are your hopes for StateShare in the long term?
I think it would be pretty cool to see, let's say you can almost create your own demos from it. So you could say like, somebody's interested in playing a game, but they don't want to quite fork out the money for it. So to try to coax them into it, you could be like, well, a demo normally gives you like access to the first area, maybe a tutorial or something like that. It'd be nice if you knew, if you were experiencing a game and playing part of a game and you went like, ooh, I think this is a really good snapshot of the game here. And you just take like, 30 minutes of your gameplay or something and share that and allow people to jump into it. But I think we've talked about on the podcast before that I really like the idea of setting community events using it as well and saying like, right, here's a state share of a certain game in a particular point with particular items. What's the most creative way you can come up with killing your target in Hitman, let's say. These are the items you've got, go crazy. And, you can then start some sort of competition with it. I like the idea of using it like that.
Yeah, I think expanding that would be interesting in the speedrunning space where you could have almost, instead of speedrunning entire games, you could go, right, here's a scenario and it's almost a race. So everyone's on the same instance, the same state share, and just go 3, 2, 1, go, first person at the end wins.
Yeah, definitely. Why, for some reason in my head, did I think StateShare was going to be an example of if I was playing a game and streaming it, or playing it with friends, and I got stuck at a particular part, I could then share my game with you, Tom, and you could jump in, get past the big boss or whatever in Sekiro, and then hand it back to me. Was that everything that was spoke about, or is that just something my brain's conjured up?
Well, I don't really know, because I wonder whether it does directly affect the save file. Like if you were to say you were playing the game and you shared the state of it, you state shared it with me, and I already own the game, could I then play it, get past a point, and then state share it back to you?
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know.
This might be one of the game by game things where if you share back, then you might be able to oversave your previous one and just continue from that point.
Yeah, what I'm hoping
how does that work for things like trophies?
I was just about to say what then stops people from being like, oh yeah, I'm going to start selling 100% achievement runs. Here you go, 40 quid, and here's your game complete for you.
I guess for trophies, you'd have to one own the game, and 2 have it the section completed on your account. So you couldn't just. I suppose you could just go to the end of the game and go, all right, all you do is take 2 steps forward, and then you roll credits. And you get that achievement, but all the achievements before that you probably wouldn't unlock.
Yeah, interesting. But yeah, I think there's more to it to StateShare than just sharing a particular slice of the game. But it's something that's probably going to develop over time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Some of these features, the Stadia specific ones, we're seeing early implementation of a concept, and we'll see how the concept grows over time. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll find more about it in Tuesday's blog post.
Yeah, it'll be Hitman 3 is out this week with StateShare.
StateShare.
Fill your boots. keep it followed to all of our socials.
See you next week.
But wrapping up on that one then, one of the things we're hoping to see this week is Capcom hosting a Resident Evil showcase. And if you remember, we had a leak a good while back now that Google had paid a cool couple of million for Capcom to port not only Resident Evil 7 but also the upcoming Resident Evil Village, or 8, across to Stadia. So this hopefully, gentlemen, will shed some light on the horror franchise, the well-renowned horror franchise. And I'd like to think at the end of this presentation we're going to see a Stadia logo as kind of the big announcement, and hopefully
I hope so, because if all of this leak turns out to be absolute rubbish, then that's going to be a bit of an issue. But if we get the actual announcement as part of this reveal, then brilliant, we've finally got something else to look forward to, because at the moment I'm starting to feel like that news is starting to get a little bit thin on the ground for what we've got to look forward to with Stadia, really.
Yeah, there's no, aside from the the coming FIFA title that we're expecting, and whatever the other EA game is. We've not really heard much news from any other big developers for 2021. We know they've came out and said there's plenty of games coming, and there's 400 right through now till 2023. Yeah. But we've not, since even the Kinect, I don't think the last Kinect they really said anything about new big titles. So
not big titles.
This would be, and in Resident Evil games traditionally come out in the March, early springtime. So this is on the doorstep. The announcements now, no doubt we're going to get a release date. It's part of the showcase.
Yeah.
Let's see it. Let's see that Stadia logo in there. And you know what? Let's see Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake come across as well.
It'd be cool to have some Stadia specific features, like StateShare, for example, could work quite well in Resident Evil.
You could indeed, yeah, with the different areas that you get into.
I will just add as a reminder with that deal, supposed deal that we heard about with the league, Google were also paying Capcom to also effectively create a porting engine as well. So we could hope down the line that if this is real and if we do finally get the announcement, we may see some other games as well, such as the Devil May Cry franchise starting to trickle across as well. Yeah. I am really hopeful for that. I really want to see that happen.
Interesting. Yeah. But obviously, keep your eyes peeled then. January 21st, which I think is this Thursday, if you're listening to this.
Yeah, Thursday.
This Thursday. So go check that out. And hopefully we'll have some news to share with you on next week's podcast regarding the Resident Evil franchise, and hopefully some more Stadia news in particular. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen, for episode number 69 of the Sounds of Stadia podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Remember, if you are new to the channel and you've made it this far, congratulations, but don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep on pushing to that 1K mark, because we've got some exciting stuff lined up for you. We're all going to go away now and talk about video games renaissance for movies, gentlemen. So back with our Indiana Jones, Star Wars news, and the Avatar game that's apparently coming. We're going to go talk about the renaissance of video game movies in our post show, which obviously our patrons get exclusively 5 days early over on patreon.com/Sounds of Stadia. So if you're one of those people who would be generous enough to throw us a little bit extra cash for a coffee to help us grow and support and invest in the channel, you can do so. Get the post show a little bit early, along with exclusive chats and gameplay. But thank you very much for tuning in this week for a very sexy episode of the Sounds of Stadia podcast. We'll see you next week. My name's been Chris.
I've been Tom.
And I've been Richie.
We've been Sounds of Stadia, everyone. Take care, have a great week, and keep playing those games. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.